People often ask me, "What's your secret?" They expect me to say something like, "I wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day," or "I drink green juice and do yoga with monks," or "I read 100 books a year." And for a long time, I tried to find something clever to say back, something impressive, something that would make me sound like I had everything figured out, like I was one of those people who had unlocked the cheat code to life. But the truth is much messier and a lot harder to swallow, because before I found any secret, before I discovered what actually works, I fell apart. It was the fall of 2019. I remember the exact moment everything cracked. Not some big dramatic scene, not some climactic blow-up. No, it happened in the middle of the night, in silence, alone. I was lying on my bedroom floor, lights off, phone on airplane mode, eyes open, but staring into nothing. The ceiling fan made this soft whooshing sound, just enough to make you feel like the world was spinning when your life had stopped. I hadn't slept in 3 nights, not because I was too busy, not because I was working on something exciting, but because I was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. I had nothing left, no motivation, no spark, no direction, no joy. I hadn't answered a single text in days. Emails piled up like unopened letters from a world I no longer belonged to. My fridge had nothing in it but a moldy lemon and expired almond milk. I wasn't depressed in the clinical sense. I was just broken. I used to be a doer, a planner, an achiever. One of those people who made to-do lists just for the thrill of checking them off. I loved the feeling of having my life together. I wore productivity like a badge, color-coded calendars, meal preps, bullet journals. But somehow, slowly, without warning, it all slipped away. First, I started snoozing my morning alarm. Then, I stopped making my bed. Then, I skipped a gym session here or there. Then I told myself I deserved a break. Just a week, I said. Then the week became a month. Then the month became a blur. And before I knew it, I was living each day on shuffle, no rhythm, no pace, no anchor. Every hour bled into the next. I'd scroll until my thumb ached. I'd binge-watch shows I didn't even enjoy. I'd lie and say I was busy when I wasn't doing anything at all. And the scariest part, I stopped caring. That's how burnout hits sometimes. Not with fire, but with fog. I started resenting everyone who seemed to have it all figured out. Friends with dream jobs, people building businesses, writers who were publishing their 3rd book while I struggled to open a blank page. Every success I saw felt like another reminder of my failure. And every attempt I made to get back on track collapsed within days. Maybe I'm just not one of those people, I thought. Maybe I'm just average. But that word, average, it burned in my chest. Because deep down, I knew I was meant for more. Not fame, not money, not followers, but meaning, impact, a life I could be proud of when no one else was watching. But I had no idea how to get there. Then one night, something happened. It wasn't a sign from the universe. It wasn't divine inspiration. It wasn't even a good idea. It was just a moment. Quiet, small, barely noticeable. I was brushing my teeth. It was 2:47 a.m. and I looked in the mirror and said, "I'm tired of feeling like this." That's it. 7 words. No drama. No tears. Just tired. And in that moment, a voice in me, one I hadn't heard in a long time, whispered, "Then do one thing. Just one." So I did. The next morning, if you could call, 10:15 a.m. morning, I got out of bed and did something I hadn't done in weeks. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop, opened a blank document, typed the words, 10 a.m. right. That's all. No big goals, no 30-day plan, no pressure, just a time and a task that at first I didn't know what to write. My mind felt like a rusted machine. Every sentence came out awkward and stiff, but I stayed there for an hour, even when it felt stupid, even when I wanted to quit. The next day, I showed up. Again, same time, same chair, same me. Still lost, still unsure, but there. And again the day after, and again the day after that. It didn't feel like a miracle. It didn't even feel good, but it felt steady, like I was building something brick by brick. Even if I couldn't see the shape of it yet, I wasn't waiting for motivation anymore. I wasn't hoping for clarity. I was just honoring the schedule. 10 o'clock, a.m., right? Whether it was 1 paragraph or 5 pages, whether I felt inspired or empty, whether I had slept well or cried the night before, the time didn't change. I did, and slowly, everything else followed. I started eating real meals again, started moving my body again, started texting people back. I wasn't healing in the way you see in movies. I wasn't dancing in the rain or laughing at sunsets. I was just keeping a promise to myself. 1 hour a day, one commitment, one sacred slice of time that I refused to let go. And it taught me something I'll never forget. Consistency is the quietest form of self-respect. People often ask, what's your secret? And I want to tell them this story. Not the polished version, not the highlight reel, but the real one. The one where I broke, the one where I got back up, the one where I didn't find a hack or shortcut, but a schedule. Because the secret isn't in the spark, it's in the showing up, the sitting down, the small, silent work no one claps for. It's boring, it's old-fashioned, it's not sexy, but it saves you. And that's where it all began for me. In a quiet room, at a broken time, with a tired heart, and one choice: show up. You know what? No one tells you. The second week is the hardest, not the first. The first week still feels kind of exciting. You've made a decision. You're doing something. Your brain is still caught up in the energy of the new . It's like the first day of school. You've got fresh notebooks. You set your alarm early. You make a smoothie. You light a candle. You tell yourself, this time, I mean it. And for a few days, you do. You feel good. You feel proud. You say, maybe I am changing. But then the novelty wears off. The candle doesn't smell as sweet. The smoothie tastes the same. The desk feels cold again. The motivation starts slipping, and you're left with the silence, the routine. The repetition. And that's when the voices start creeping in. Why are you doing this? Who even cares? Nothing's changing. You're wasting your time. They're quiet at first, like whispers through a door. But each day, they get a little louder, a little bolder, a little more convincing. You start to question everything. You stare at the schedule you made and think, what's the point? That was me on day 9. Let me paint the picture. It was raining, not the romantic kind. The cold, grey kind that turns the sky into a wet sheet and makes the walls sweat. I had slept past my alarm. My hair was greasy. My room smelled like leftovers and regret. I sat down at my desk at 10:11, a .m.-11 minutes late. I stared at the blank page, and for the first time since I started this whole thing, I didn't want to write. I didn't even want to pretend to write. I just wanted to shut the laptop and go back to bed. Because what was I even doing this for? Who would ever read it? What was the goal? Why was I putting myself through this routine when it didn't seem to be doing anything? That's the thing no one tells you about building a habit. It doesn't reward you right away. There are no fireworks, no applause, no big reveal. There's just you, and the chair, and the clock, and the part of your brain that wants to quit. But here's what saved me that day. I had told someone, a friend, a quiet, thoughtful friend who doesn't say much, but listens well. I had told her, I'm trying to write at 10 every day, just 1 hour, that's it. And she had smiled and said, I love that for you. That's all. No advice, no pressure, just, I love that for you. It wasn't a promise to her, but it was enough to make me hesitate before I quit. Because somewhere in my mind I thought, if I don't do it today, what am I saying to myself? That I only show up when it's easy. That I give up after a bad morning. That I crumble at the first resistance. No. I couldn't let that be true. So I opened the document and I wrote one sentence. It was awful. I hated it. But I wrote a second one, and then a third, and somehow, 45 minutes later, I had a page. And when I finished, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel amazing, but I felt something rare. I felt trustworthy, taught to myself. That was the first time I understood what it means to build momentum. Momentum doesn't mean you feel like a rocket ship. It means you do something despite not feeling like it. It means you lay down the track before the train ever starts moving. And then, slowly, day by day, something starts to shift. You're not waiting to feel motivated anymore. You're just showing up, and the showing up becomes a kind of ritual, a sacred thing. You don't want to break the chain. You don't want to lie to yourself. You don't want to become someone who bails at the first sign of discomfort. It wasn't glamorous. It was messy. There were days I wrote garbage. There were days I cried while typing. There were days I spent the entire hour deleting and rewriting the same paragraph. But each day I sat down anyway. I was building something invisible. Call it grit, call it discipline, call it self-respect. It didn't matter what name I gave it. What mattered was that it was mine, and no one could take it from me. People think the schedule is about time management. It's not. It's about identity. Every time you show up for that one small thing, whatever it is, you're reinforcing the kind of person you want to be. Not in theory, not in your vision board, but in reality. You become someone who does what they say. You become someone who values effort over ease. You become someone who is slowly, painfully, brick by boring brick, building a life. Not a life that looks good on social media. Not a life that gets likes or admiration, but a life you respect when no one's watching. A life with roots. I didn't tell many people what I was doing. It wasn't some big announcement. No Instagram post. No hashtag new me hashtag dot. It was quiet, private, tender dot. Because sometimes the most sacred things need protection. They need space to breathe, to grow, to stumble. I didn't want praise. I didn't want pressure. I just wanted to know I could keep a promise to myself. And that meant more to me than any external validation. The second week taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn. Discipline is not the opposite of freedom. It is freedom. Because when you choose a schedule, when you choose a time and stick to it, you free yourself from indecision, from chaos, from self-doubt, from the constant noise of should I, shouldn't I, maybe tomorrow. You don't have to negotiate with yourself every day. You just know, this is what I do, this is who I am, and that is powerful. Not flashy, not exciting, but powerful. So yeah, the second week is the hardest. Because it's when the romance fades and the real work begins. It's when you learn that progress is boring, that growth is slow, that change is quiet. But it's also when something magical starts to happen underneath all that struggle. You start to trust yourself again, and that's worth every hard morning, every blank page, every whisper that says, quit, because you didn't quit. And that means something. That means everything. End of part 2. Let's talk about the middle. Not the beginning, when everything feels shiny and full of hope. Not the ending, when you're celebrating how far you've come. The middle. The slow, the quiet, the grind. That's the place no one wants to talk about. Because in the middle, nothing looks different. You wake up, you show up, you do the thing, again and again and again. And one day, you look in the mirror and wonder, why does everything still look the same? You're doing the work. You're following the plan. You've kept the schedule, so why does it still feel like nothing? That was me in week 4. By now, I had kept my promise to myself for almost 30 days. 30 times I'd sat down, 30 hours of writing, 30 little battles against the voice that said, skip today, just once. And I was proud of that. But I was also impatient, because when you give something your time, your sacred, undistracted, daily time, you expect to see results. That's how we're wired, right? You put in work, you get a reward, but sometimes effort looks invisible for a while, and that's where the doubt creeps back in. I remember one specific morning. It was raining again. There's always rain in this story, huh? It was one of those mornings where the sky looked like it forgot how to be blue. I was staring at the same piece I'd been rewriting for days. No breakthroughs, no inspiration, just the same paragraph, slightly reworded again and again. And I sat there and thought, why am I doing this? It felt like I was on a treadmill, running but going nowhere. I hadn't published anything. No one was reading what I wrote. My life still looked the same from the outside. Same apartment, same routines, same quiet existence. I wasn't suddenly more productive. I wasn't famous. I wasn't changed. But then something strange happened. My phone buzzed. It was a friend I hadn't talked to in a while. She asked how I was doing, and I typed without thinking, I've been writing every morning, just an hour, every day. Haven't missed one. And she replied, wow, that's really cool. You seem different lately, like more grounded. I stopped. Grounded. No one had ever said that about me before. I'd been the frantic one, the overthinker, the all-or-nothing girl who burned bright and then disappeared. But grounded, that was new. That was good. And in that moment, I realized something. Even when it feels like nothing is changing, everything is. Let me explain. When you do something every day, it doesn't just change what you make, it changes who you are. Your posture shifts, your energy feels different, your eyes have more focus, your voice, steadies. Not because life is suddenly easier, but because you trust yourself more. And that trust, it's visible to the people who love you, to the strangers who meet you, even to the mirror. but the shift is subtle. It's like watching a flower grow. You don't see the movement. You just look one day and realize it's blooming. I think we live in a world addicted to visible progress. Before and after photos, follower counts, daily streaks, calorie trackers, word counts. And don't get me wrong, I love progress. I love goals. I love seeing results. But some of the most meaningful transformations, you can't measure them. You can't see them in the mirror or post them on social media. They happen in the quiet, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you carry your disappointments, in the way you sit down even when you're tired and say, I'm here, I'm still doing this, I'm not quitting on me. That kind of change, it builds slowly, but once it's there, it never leaves. People always ask for the secret, but what they really want is a shortcut. They want the 6 steps, the life hack, the podcast episode that changes everything. But here's the truth that hurts. Before it heals, there is no shortcut to integrity. You have to earn it, day by day, promise by promise, hour by hour. And you don't always get a round of applause. You don't always feel proud. Some days you'll sit in front of your work and feel numb. You'll wonder why you ever started. You'll feel silly, small, invisible. And those are the most important days. Because when you show up then, when you keep the schedule not because it's fun, but because it's right, you build something unbreakable. Let me tell you what started changing in me. Even when I didn't see it at first, I started sleeping better, not because I was tired, but because I had less guilt. You know that heavy feeling, when you know you didn't do the thing you said you would, when you avoid your goals like they're old friends you ghost. That went away. And in its place came peace, not the loud euphoric kind, the kind that shows up when you brush your teeth at night. Look at your reflection and think, I did what I said I would. I kept my word today. That's the kind of peace that can't be bought. I also started noticing how I handled failure. Before, I used to spiral. One bad day became 3. One missed deadline became self-hatred. One mistake became a story. I'll never make it. But after a month of keeping the schedule, I noticed something different. I'd have a bad writing day and just move on. I didn't let it define me. I didn't question everything. I just closed the laptop and thought, cool, tomorrow's another one. That's resilience. And I didn't learn it in a book. I learned it in the chair, at 10 a.m. every day. So yeah, maybe nothing looked different, but everything was different. I had built something inside myself that didn't need proof, didn't need validation, didn't need praise. I had built trust, and trust is quiet. It doesn't shout, it doesn't shine, it just holds you up, especially when everything else feels shaky. So if you're in that season right now, the middle, the invisible effort, the stretch where you think, why hasn't anything changed? Let me tell you something real. You're not stuck, you're not broken, you're not failing, you're becoming. And becoming is slow, but it's worth it. So keep the schedule, keep showing up, keep doing the thing no one sees. Because one day, you'll look in the mirror, and you won't just look different, you'll feel it, you'll feel you, and that's the moment everything changes. Let me tell you a story. It's not glamorous, it's not wise, it's not something I'm proud of, but it's true, and sometimes, the most honest moments are the ones that save us later. This is the story of the day I almost quit, not thought about. Quitting. Almost actually did. The day I came this close to closing the door on everything I had worked to build, not because it wasn't working, but because I was scared it was. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays always felt hollow to me, not the hopeful rush of Monday, not the halfway mark of Wednesday, just Tuesday. I hadn't slept well. Again, there was something restless living under my skin, a buzzing, quiet voice saying, you don't have to do this today. Just skip, no one will know. And technically, that voice was right. No one would know. There were no bosses, no deadlines, no cheering section waiting for me to post an update. That this whole thing, this schedule, it was mine and mine alone, which made it harder, not easier. Because when you're accountable only to yourself, you find out real fast whether or not you like that person. I made my coffee late that morning, didn't brush my hair, didn't bother opening the curtains. Everything in me felt heavy, not physically, not emotionally, just existentially, like I was dragging around a question with no answer. What am I even doing this for? And when I opened my laptop, I stared at the blinking cursor for exactly 6 minutes and 22 seconds. Yes, I counted before I slammed it shut. I pushed back from the desk, stood up, looked around my little apartment and thought, why am I pretending this matters? Why am I chasing this imaginary future me like she's some saint I'll never reach? Who do I think I am? And there it was, that the question beneath all the others, the one that always comes for us eventually. Who do you think you are? That question haunted me. It always had. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't about ambition. It was about worthiness. Do I deserve to show up like this? To create something that hasn't yet proven its value? To claim this time, this space, this identity? And worse, what if I fail publicly? What if I give this everything, my hours, my heart, my hunger, and it leads nowhere? That's the cruel trick of self-doubt. It doesn't scream. It whispers, and if you don't know how to fight it, you'll believe every lie it tells you. So I did what most people do when fear takes over. I grabbed my phone, started scrolling, started comparing, started feeding the part of me that wanted to run. I watched strangers win while I sat there feeling like I'd already lost. I read posts by people living their dreams while I couldn't even finish a page, and for a moment, I believed it all. That I was behind, that I was late, that I wasn't cut out for this. I walked around my apartment, barefoot and aimless, telling myself it would be okay if I just quit. Not forever. Just today. Just one little break. One missed session. One skipped hour. It sounded harmless, but deep down, I knew. That's how it starts, because when you've built momentum, when you've finally started to trust yourself, when the gears are turning, stopping even once, just once, can send the whole thing spiraling. Not because the world will fall apart, but because you will stop believing that you can do hard things. You'll think, see, I knew I'd mess it up eventually. And that story, it sticks. That's why the day I almost quit felt like life or death, because it wasn't about one skipped session. It was about whether I believed my effort mattered. But something happened that I didn't expect. I got a message from a friend I hadn't seen in years. She had stumbled across something I'd posted weeks ago, a tiny sentence I barely remembered writing. She wrote, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, that thing you wrote, it made me cry. I've been feeling so lost lately, and your words gave me a little hope. I don't know what you're working on, but please don't stop." I read it once, then again. Then I sat down on the edge of my bed and cried, not because I felt seen, but because I realized someone was listening, even when I didn't know it, even when I didn't think it mattered, even when I was drowning in doubt, and the echo of my own fears. My work had reached someone, and that was enough. So, I got up. I walked back to my desk. I didn't wash my face. I didn't fix my posture. I didn't light a candle. I just sat, and I opened the laptop again, and I wrote, through the doubt, through the fog, through the voice that said I had nothing left to say. I wrote for 1 hour, and when I was done, I didn't feel healed, but I felt anchored. Here's what I learned that day. The urge to quit often comes right before the breakthrough, right before the moment your work starts to stretch beyond you, right before the shift, right before the proof. But if you quit, if you walk away, you miss it. You miss the magic that was waiting just past the edge of your comfort, because effort doesn't always reward you immediately, but it's always doing something. Always. In your brain, in your body, in your habits, in your belief, it's building. Even when you can't feel it, people think the hardest part of any journey is starting. It's not. The hardest part is not stopping. When no one's clapping, when results are invisible, when everything feels pointless, that's when most people walk away. Not because they can't do it, but because they convinced themselves it wasn't worth doing. And that breaks my heart, because I know what lives on the other side of that moment. I've seen it, and it's beautiful. So if today's your day, the day you're staring at the thing you promised to do, and everything in you wants to quiet, I want to tell you this. Don't walk away from yourself. Not today. Even if the work feels bad, even if it feels useless, even if you hate every second of it, show up anyway. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be there. That's what the schedule is for. Not to make you a machine, but to make you a witness to your own resilience. The day I almost quit was the day I realized I'm not doing this for the results. I'm doing it for the relationship I have with myself. And that relationship, it's worth protecting. Even on the bad days, especially on the bad days. Because when you stay, when you show up through the storm, you tell yourself a story that echoes forever. I didn't quit on me, and that's a story worth telling. Every single day, you've been showing up. Every day, every hour, You've been keeping the promise, even when no one's watching. You've survived the hard mornings. You've ignored the excuses. You've done the work, and now, you wait. You wait for the world to notice. You wait for someone to say, "Hey, I see you. You're doing great." You wait for the applause, the recognition, the breakthrough, but it doesn't come, and that silence, it hits different. No one talks about this part, the part where you're consistent, you're committed, you're improving, and still, it feels like nobody cares. You check your inbox, nothing. You check your phone, still nothing. You refresh your feed, hoping anyone noticed the thing you poured your soul into. But the likes are few, the comments are sparse, the silence is loud. You feel invisible, like you're yelling into a canyon and hearing nothing back, like all your effort is evaporating into the air. And the worst part, you don't even want fame. You just want to know this matters to someone besides you. But for now, it doesn't seem like it does. That's when the temptation creeps in, the temptation to stop caring, to pull back, to shut down, to say, why bother? Why write the book if no one's going to read it? Why make the video if no one's watching? Why post the thing if no one's responding? You start telling yourself stories. I'm not cut out for this. I must be doing it wrong. I'm wasting my time. And before you know it, you're negotiating with your dreams again, chipping away at them piece by piece until you're back where you started, not because you failed, but because the world didn't clap. Let me tell you something that saved me. The world doesn't clap for practice, it claps for performance. But the schedule, it lives in the practice, it lives in the quiet, unshared, uncelebrated grind. And if you're only doing the work for the applause, you'll quit when it doesn't come. But if you're doing it because it matters to you, because it makes you feel alive, because it's your way of showing up for the life you want, then the applause becomes extra nice, but not necessary. I remember sitting on the floor one night, surrounded by pages of writing, drafts, edits, scraps, stories I hadn't shown anyone, words I wasn't even sure were good. And I looked at them all and thought, if no one ever reads this, would it still be worth it? That question haunted me, because if I said no, it meant I was working for approval. But if I said yes, really meant it, then maybe I was working for something deeper. So I sat there, quiet for a long time. And eventually, the answer came. Yes. Yes, it's still worth it. Because these pages saved me. They taught me discipline. They gave my pain a purpose. They reminded me I still had something inside me worth offering, even if no one ever applauded. There's a kind of power that comes from creating, in the dark. From making something without needing it to perform. From saying, this is mine, I made this, and that's enough. It's the power of doing the work for you, for your soul, for your sanity, for your integrity. Because when you rely on applause to fuel you, you'll run out the moment it fades. But when you rely on commitment, you become unstoppable. That doesn't mean you won't still crave recognition. Of course you will. We all want to be seen, to be valued, to be understood. That's human. But when the claps don't come, you have to learn how to clap for yourself. You have to learn how to celebrate the fact that you didn't give up, that you showed up again, that you made something out of nothing because you could. That's courage, and it's rare. I remember once I was walking through the city and I passed this old man painting on the sidewalk, not selling anything, not performing, just painting, canvas propped against a wall, little plastic cups of water at his feet, a coffee beside him. He didn't look up, didn't flinch as people passed, didn't care who watched. He was just there, brush in hand, living in his world, and something about that image stuck with me for weeks, because I thought that's what it looks like to love your work, to do it for the doing. Not the outcome, not the audience, not the validation, just for the craft, for the soul of it. I want that kind of relationship with my work. Not needy, not fragile, but rooted, strong, sacred. And the schedule, that's how I build it. 1 hour a day, no audience, no spotlight, just me, and the page, and the choice to keep going. So if you're in that season where the world feels silent, where the applause is absent, and your work feels invisible, I want to tell you something no one told me, that silence isn't failure. It's the soil. It's where the roots grow deep, where the muscle builds, where the identity forms. It's where you learn to create without condition, to write without reward, to work without the world watching. And that kind of strength, it's unshakable. One day, the world will notice, not because you chased it, but because you became someone worth following, someone who didn't quit, someone who built something real when no one was clapping. And when that day comes, you'll be ready, not just because you have the work to show, but because you earned it, in the dark, in the quiet. On all the days that no one saw, you kept the schedule, you honored the craft. You became the kind of person who shows up anyway, and that's what lasts. Let's talk about what happens when life falls apart. Not just a bad day, not just a little stress. I mean the big stuff, the real stuff. The kind that steals your breath and bends your bones. The death, the breakup, the illness, the betrayal. The moments that punch a hole through your chest and leave you wondering how you'll ever feel whole again. The moments when the schedule feels like a joke. Because how do you keep showing up when your world is in pieces? I asked myself that question one morning with shaking hands and swollen eyes. It was barely 9 a.m., but I had already cried twice. The kind of crying that leaves you hollow. No drama, just exhaustion. My life had cracked open overnight. Not slowly, not gently, but like a glass vase hurled against concrete. I won't tell you what happened, not because I don't trust you, but because this story could be your story, too. We've all had those moments. Different details, same devastation. The kind where someone says one sentence and it breaks your entire future. The kind where something changes and you don't get to vote on it. And when that happened to me, I forgot how to breathe. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, and stared at the notebook where I kept my little hand-drawn schedule. 10 a.m., right? That was all it said. But that morning it felt cruel, stupid, impossible. How could I write when I couldn't even think straight? How could I tell a story when I felt like mine had just ended? The grief was so loud it made everything else go quiet. Food didn't taste like anything. Music didn't feel like anything. Time blurred into a fog of survival. And yet, at 9:58 a.m., I stood up. At 9:59 a.m., I walked to my desk. At 10 a.m., I sat down and I wrote, not a novel, not a masterpiece, just words. Broken, messy, scared words. I wrote, I don't want to be here, but I'm here, so I'm writing. Because I promised myself I would. And even though everything hurts, I'm not breaking that promise. And that was the whole session. No editing, no plan, no clarity, just me, showing up. And afterward, I cried again. But it was different, not the grief kind, the grounded kind. Because in a life that had just gone up in flames, I found one brick still standing, one thread I could hold on to, one small act that whispered, you still belong to yourself. Let me tell you what I've learned in the hardest seasons. Discipline is a form of self-love, not the soft kind, not the bubble bath kind, the warrior kind, the kind that sits beside your pain and says, I know it hurts, but we don't abandon ourselves here. Because when everything else is uncertain, your effort can still be sacred. It can still be yours, and that matters. People will tell you, take a break, be gentle with yourself, and they're not wrong. Rest matters, compassion matters, slowing down matters, but there's a difference between rest and relapse, between grace and giving up, between healing and hiding, and only you can know which one you're doing that morning. I didn't write because I was strong. I wrote because I didn't want to lose the only part of myself that still felt real. And sometimes, that's what the schedule becomes, a lifeline, not a prison, not a punishment, but a reminder that you are still here, that you still matter, that you still choose to participate in your own life, even when it's burning. There's this idea that we have to feel ready to work, that we need clarity, energy, peace. But what I've learned, you don't wait for peace, you make peace by showing up, by sitting down, by doing the work however broken, however small, because the schedule isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And when life is shattering, presence is the rarest gift you can give yourself. Let me be honest with you, there were days after that where I didn't do much, where the writing was garbage, where I barely strung together a sentence. But the point wasn't the quality, the point was, I didn't disappear, I didn't let grief erase me, and that was everything. Here's what I want you to know. If your life ever falls apart, you don't have to rise, you don't have to fight, you don't have to fix, you don't have to smile. But if you can, try to show up, even if it's just for 10 minutes, even if you only write one sentence, even if you sit in front of the keyboard and cry. That counts, that matters. That's the thread you can follow back to yourself. We think healing is about waiting until the pain goes away, but sometimes, healing is what happens while you keep moving, slowly, softly, faithfully even, through the ache. especially through the ache, because that's how you become someone new, not by avoiding the fire, but by walking through it and still choosing to create, still choosing to be you. The schedule saved me, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in the simplest way. It gave me something to hold on to when everything else felt like falling. And sometimes, that's all we need. Just one small thing that doesn't break when we do. Just one quiet promise that reminds us we're still worthy of effort, even when life makes us forget. So if the day ever comes when your world tilts, when the bottom drops out, when you lose something you thought you'd never lose, I hope you remember this. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to keep showing up. That's how we survive. That's how we heal. That's how we come home to ourselves again. There's a truth we don't talk about enough. A quiet, powerful truth. One that isn't flashy. One that doesn't sell headlines. But one that changes lives if you let it. And it's this. Effort compounds, not overnight. Not overnight. But slowly, steadily. INVISIBLY. Until one day you look around and realize you've built something real. Something that no one can take away from you. Not luck. Not hype. Not raw talent. Just effort. Stacked. Layered. Lived. I remember the first time I felt it. Really felt it. Not imagined. Not hoped. Not visualized. But witnessed it. It was an ordinary morning. Gray sky. Cheap coffee. Sweatpants. Nothing special. But I sat down to write like I always did. 10 o'clock a.m. sharp. I opened my document, and suddenly, without trying, the words came, not slowly, not painfully, but like a river finally breaking through a dam. Paragraph after paragraph poured out, clear, focused, alive. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was honest, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't hate what I wrote. In fact, I loved it. And when I looked up, an hour had passed, like 10 minutes, and I realized, this is what effort creates. Let's rewind, because it didn't start this way. If you've been with me from part 1, you know it started with a blank screen, a schedule taped to my wall, a commitment made quietly, to no one but myself. There were days I didn't believe in it, days I hated the process, days I wanted to walk away, but I kept going, 1 hour, every day, no matter how I felt. And at first, the results were invisible. No followers, no praise, no breakthroughs, just me and the work. But what I couldn't see back then, the compound effect, the way each session was laying a brick, each small effort was building a foundation, each tiny win was strengthening a muscle I didn't even know I had. Here's what no one tells you. Mastery is boring. It's not fireworks. It's not genius. It's not some magical flow state that arrives one morning and stays forever. It's repetition, discipline, patience. And most of all, it's time. That's the part we resist, because we live in a world that rewards speed. Go viral, scale fast, hack your habits. But real, lasting transformation, it doesn't happen at the speed of WI-V. It happens at the speed of honesty, at the pace of presence, in the slow rhythm of consistent, imperfect effort. You won't always see it happening. In fact, most days you won't. You'll feel like you're stuck, like you're not getting better, like you're wasting your time. But here's what I need. You too here. That's the compounding working, silently, steadily, in the background, because progress doesn't shout, it whispers. And sometimes the most powerful shifts happen when nothing feels different, but everything is. Think of it like this. You go to the gym one time. Do you see results? No. You go for a week. Still no real change. 2 weeks. Maybe your pants fit a little better, but your body looks the same. You're sweating, struggling, pushing, but the mirror, unchanged. And then one day, without warning, you look in the mirror and you see it. A shape, a glow, a strength you didn't know was there. And that moment, that's not the result of that day's workout. It's the result of all the days before it, stacked, stored, waiting to reveal themselves. That's compounding. It's the same with writing, or music, or healing, or learning, or building a business, or rebuilding your life. You plant seeds every day, and for a while, all you see is dirt. But underneath, roots are forming, strong ones, and eventually, the first shoot breaks the surface. Not because you forced it, but because you kept going. Even when there was no proof, even when you doubted everything, even when you wanted to quit, you kept the schedule, you kept the promise, and the promise kept you. There's something sacred about watching your own effort bear fruit, something deeply human. quietly holy, because in a world that wants everything fast, you chose the long road, and that road built you at. It taught you how to sit with resistance, how to work without reward, how to believe in something invisible. And those are the lessons that last. Not just in your craft, but in your character. So here's what I want to tell you. If you're still in the nothing's working phase, you are not wasting your time. You are building momentum. And momentum is the mother of miracles. It doesn't look like magic, but it creates magic. It builds slowly, quietly, and then, all at once, one day, the dam breaks, the words come, the clarity hits, the opportunity lands, and people will say, "Wow, that happened overnight." And you'll smile because you'll know the truth. It didn't happen overnight. It happened every night, every morning, every hour, every time you chose effort over excuses, discipline over doubt, the schedule over surrender. Effort compounds. That's the secret. Not luck, not timing, not talent, just showing up again and again and again, and trusting that someday it'll add up to something greater than you could have imagined. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You don't build a house all at once. You lay the first brick, then the second, then the third, piece by piece, day by day. It doesn't look like much at first. In fact, for a while, it doesn't look like anything. A few scattered materials, some scribbled plans, a lot of dirt and noise. But over time, if you keep showing up, a shape begins to form. Walls, windows, rooms, and eventually, you walk through the door and realize, you built this. No one gave it to you. You earned it. Every inch, every detail, every corner of it is yours. And what's even more beautiful, it wasn't done in a frenzy. It wasn't rushed. It was built with care, with consistency, with quiet devotion. That's how a life is made, not in big dramatic moments, but in the small, steady ones, the hours no one sees, the decisions no one applauds, the mornings when you show up tired and still show up anyway. Those are the bricks. That's the blueprint. And if you're patient, if you keep laying them one after another, you won't just build habits, you'll build yourself. Let me tell you about a morning I almost missed. It was a Thursday, a cold, grey Thursday. The kind where your bones ache for no reason. I woke up late, had a headache, felt nothing, no spark, no energy, no urgency. Just numb. I stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee I didn't really want, and stared out the window like the sky owed me something. I remember thinking, it's just one day, I'll skip this one. I've earned it, right? And I almost did. I almost put my notebook away, almost told myself I'd double up tomorrow. But something stopped me. Not inspiration, not guilt, not fear, just the memory of how far I'd come, how many mornings I'd already survived, how many hours I'd already stacked. And so reluctantly, quietly I sat down and wrote. It wasn't my best work, not even close, but it was something. One sentence turned into two into a paragraph. And by the end of the hour, I had a page, a real page. A page that didn't exist before I chose to stay. And I realized something. I hope you never forget. The hardest days are often the most important ones, because those are the days when the habit becomes you, not just something you do, but something you are. A person who keeps going, a person who honors the process, a person who doesn't quit on the quiet days. The world will always tempt you with shortcuts. Skip the steps, find the hack, leap ahead. But here's the thing, you can't skip becoming. Becoming takes time, effort, deliberate motion. It takes choosing the schedule not because it's easy, but because it's yours. And when you make that choice day after day, something powerful happens. You become solid, rooted. You stop needing motivation because you've built something stronger. Momentum doesn't ask you how you feel, it just moves you. It doesn't wait for inspiration, it creates. Inspiration, it carries you through the low points, through the fog, through the doubts, and slowly, without even realizing it, you become the kind of person who doesn't break their own promises, not because you're perfect, but because you're patient. Let's pause here, because I want to ask you something. How many things have you almost finished? Projects that never left the draft folder, books with bookmarks stuck halfway, plans you made on January 1st and forgot by February. That we all have those stories, and it's not because we didn't want them, it's because we waited for a version of ourselves that felt ready, excited, confident. But what if I told you the version of you that finishes things, that builds something meaningful, That version doesn't appear fully formed. That version is built, piece by piece, day by day. There's no dramatic moment, no switch you flip. It happens in tiny decisions. When you choose to start, even if it's late. When you write a sentence, even if it's bad. When you keep the promise, even when no one would blame you for breaking it. Each of those moments is a brick, laid with intention. And those bricks don't just build routines, they build identity. They turn you into someone you trust. Here's the truth. Most people don't fail because they're not good enough. They fail because they stop too soon. They stop at 90%, at 75%, at 50%. They convince themselves they've already lost, not because they have, but because they stopped believing effort was enough. But effort is enough, not for instant success, but for real success. The kind that's earned, the kind that lasts, the kind that no one can take from you because it wasn't handed to you in the first place. So if you're tired, if it feels like you've been laying bricks forever and the house still isn't done, I want you to take a deep breath and remember, you're not building for today, you're building for tomorrow, for next year, for the version of you who will one day walk through the door of a life they built by hand and whisper, "Thank you for not quitting. On me that day will come, but only if you keep going, piece by piece, day by day." That's how you build a life. There comes a moment, after days, weeks, months, when you realize something has changed. You can't quite explain it. You don't notice it happening. There's no parade, no spotlight, but it's there. It's in the way you move, the way you speak to yourself, the way you trust your own hands, your own time, your own voice. You've changed, and not in a dramatic movie ending kind of way, but in the quiet, almost sacred kind of way. The kind that only comes from showing up every day when no one's watching. That's the kind of transformation that lasts, and it's the kind that only happens when you keep the schedule. Let me tell you a story. It wasn't a big day. There was no breakthrough, no viral moment. I was walking home from a cafe, the same walk I'd done dozens of times, same cracked sidewalk, same breeze, same sunset creeping down behind the trees, but something was different. I didn't know it until I passed by a group of students laughing on the curb. One of them was holding a sketch pad, showing his friends a drawing. They were clapping, cheering him on, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel envy. I didn't feel behind, didn't feel invisible, didn't wonder if I'd missed my chance. Instead, I smiled, not at them, at me, because I realized I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. I wasn't waiting for permission. I wasn't sitting in the audience, hoping someone would call my name. I was already doing the thing on my own, quietly, daily. And that moment, as simple as it sounds, was one of the most powerful I've ever lived. Transformation is quiet. We think it's loud. We think it shows up with fireworks and clarity and a big aha. But most of the time, it shows up as a whisper. Hey, you didn't flinch today. You didn't spiral when you messed up. You sat down without negotiating with yourself. You trusted your own voice. And little by little, those whispers become who you are. There was a time I needed reminders to stay on track. Sticky notes, alarms, guilt trips. Now I don't think twice. I don't need to convince myself to show up. It's just what I do. It's just what I do. It's who I am. And that didn't come from discipline alone. It came from identity shift. Because when you do something long enough, it stops being something you do and starts being something you are. There's this concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. It's the brain's ability to change, to rewire itself, to create new patterns and habits and beliefs. And guess what fuels it? Repetition. Not emotion, not intention, not wanting it badly enough, just doing it again and again and again. That's how change happens, not in a rush of motivation, but in the patient, daily decision to try again. To build new grooves in your mind. New tracks. New defaults. Until one day, you are different. I remember the first time someone called me consistent. They said it like it was a compliment, and I smiled. But inside I laughed, because they didn't see the early mornings, the self-doubt, the tiny failures, the skipped dinners, the what am I even doing moments. They just saw the product, the finished thing. But I knew the truth. I didn't become consistent because I was naturally disciplined. I became consistent because I made a decision. One that I repeated every single day, especially when I didn't feel like it. That decision, to keep the schedule, no matter what. That's the magic of transformation. It doesn't require talent. It doesn't require timing. It doesn't require timing. It doesn't even require belief. It only requires this. Keep going, even when you feel lost, even when no one sees it, even when it hurts. Keep laying the bricks. Keep showing up for the practice. Keep choosing the quiet path, because that path will carry you somewhere the shortcuts never could. It'll carry you into the kind of life you thought was reserved for other people, the kind of life you thought was out of reach, the kind of life that becomes yours because you built it from the ground up. Here's the hardest part. You don't get to see the change while it's happening. You'll feel stuck. You'll feel slow. You'll wonder if anything's working. But if you're showing up, it is working. Every word, every session, every repetition, it's carving something inside you, something solid, something resilient. And eventually, when you're not even looking, you'll notice you're not the same person anymore. You're braver, quieter, stronger, more rooted, not because you chased change, but because you committed to showing up, and the showing up changed you. That's what the schedule does. It doesn't just keep you on track. It transforms you gently, permanently. It makes you into someone who doesn't break their own heart anymore. Someone who chooses effort over avoidance, patience over panic, integrity over ease. And eventually you become someone you're proud of. So if you're in the middle of the work right now, if it still feels messy, if you're not sure it's working, if you're wondering if you're really growing, let me be the voice that tells you you are. You may not see it yet, but it's there in your choices, in your rhythm, in the way you keep returning to the work, even when everything inside you says to run. That's growth. That's transformation. That's the real secret. It's not motivation. It's not magic. It's not a breakthrough. It's the schedule. The quiet, consistent, courageous schedule. The one you show up for, and eventually, it shows up for you. You've made it. Not to the finish line, because there is no finish line. Not to some mountaintop where everything is perfect. But to something far more powerful. A quiet knowing. A truth you now carry deep in your bones. That the life you want, the one you've been dreaming of, reaching for, aching toward, it's not built in bursts. It's built in rhythm. It's built in repetition. It's built in showing up every day, without fail. Even when it's hard. Even when it's boring. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. That's the secret. The one no one wants to hear, because it's not sexy. It's not glamorous. It's not fast, but it works. Let's go back to where we started, to the beginning, to that first question. What's your secret? People ask it like there's a trick, like there's something you know that they don't, something you swallowed, something you bought, something you stumbled into on a lucky Tuesday afternoon. You know the truth now, don't you? There is no trick. There's just the choice to stay, to try, to commit, to fail forward, to begin again and again and again. You know now what most people never discover. The schedule isn't about time management. It's about self-trust. It's about becoming someone you believe in, someone who follows through, someone who honors the promises they make to themselves, someone who doesn't wait for perfect conditions because they've learned how to work in any condition. That's the life-changing part. Not the product, not the numbers, not the applause, but the person you become in the process. I want to tell you something tender now. Something I hope stays with you long after you close this page. You didn't need to be more talented. You didn't need a better plan. You didn't need anyone's permission. You just needed time and the courage to meet it. With effort. That's it. That's the whole thing. And now look at what you've done. You've built something. Maybe not everything yet. Maybe not the book, or the business, or the body, or the dream. But you've built the foundation. And you built it honestly. That matters. You can't fake consistency. You can't hack discipline. You can't skip self-respect. Those things have to be earned, and you've earned them by being the person who showed up when it was easier not to. By returning to the page, the practice, the plan when no one else was watching. By choosing quiet effort over loud excuses. That's the root system of a meaningful life. You know what I think the real reward is? It's not success. It's not a platform. It's not even pride. It's this peace. Peace in your own skin. Peace in your own path. Peace in knowing you didn't quit on yourself. That you stayed. That you tried. That you gave what you had, even when it didn't feel like enough. That kind of peace. You can't buy it. You can't borrow it. You can only build it, and you build it. With the schedule, I want you to imagine something for me. Close your eyes. Just for a second. and picture the version of you 1 year from now. Same heart, same dreams, but stronger, clearer, rooted. This version of you doesn't flinch when things get hard. They know how to keep going. They know how to build momentum. They know how to take a bad day, a hard week, a broken month, and keep moving anyway. This version of you is proud, not because they made it, but because they made themselves. Brick by brick, hour by hour, page by page, through the discipline of the ordinary, through the schedule. That's what this whole journey has been about. Not just productivity, but becoming. Not just goals, but growth. Not just routines, but resilience. This is how you build a life. Not in leaps, not in lightning, but in the slow, steady work of showing up when it's easier not to, and trusting that effort compounds, that momentum matters, that you are not powerless. You never were. So the next time someone asks, "What's your secret?" you'll smile. Not because there's a trick, but because you've learned what most people never will. You'll say, "The secret is the schedule," and maybe they'll nod, maybe they'll get it, maybe they won't, but you'll know. You'll carry that truth in your bones because it's how you got here. One step, one session, one sunrise at a time. That's how you became someone unstoppable. That's how you built a life. This is your legacy now. Not just what you made, but how you made it and who you became while no one was watching.